That was fun.
All
That
right.
is the best interview I've ever had, for the record. For the record.
Welcome to Law Next. On today's show, I'm continuing my Law Next on Location series, as I'm calling it. I'm out in the San Francisco Bay Area for a couple of weeks. And while I'm out here, I'm interviewing several of the innovators and entrepreneurs who are involved in the legal tech world who live out this way. And with a little bit of a twist, I thought it would be fun to not just sit and interview them, but to interview them in somewhere that they enjoy, that they kind of find special. So today I am here with Nathan Walter, co-founder and CEO of Briefpoint. Nathan, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Really good. Really
All
good.
right. Well, cheers.
Cheers.
So, that's good. As the viewers of this, and I guess I should say that if you're listening to the audio of this podcast, you're missing out because why don't you tell us where we are here?
So right now we're at Paradise Ridge Winery, which sits in Santa Rosa on the cusp of the Mayacamas Mountain Range. So Mayacamas Mountain Range is what splits Sonoma County and Napa County. And we are on the Sonoma County side of the Mayacamas, enjoying a red blend from Sonoma County. And it's about a block from my house, so it works out.
Right. And so that's what I was going to ask. So that's about a block from your house. You were just talking to the people inside of it. So I don't know if they're the owners or you know them.
Yeah.
From having been here before, right?
Right.
This is not your first time at this winery?
Not my first time. One of the attendants here went to school with my cousin in St. Helena. I was born and raised in Sonoma City, in Sonoma County, so small town. Went down to Southern California, went to Marin, and now I'm back in my home county.
So that was going to be my next question, which is, I know you moved back up here fairly recently, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we moved up here. I wanted to be a little close to some people I was working with at Stanford on the Codex platform and or program, and just be a little bit closer to the pulse of legal tech, which is obviously San Francisco.
Shall we slide some food over as well?
Yeah.
You're gonna watch us eat and drink here for a little bit while we have a bit of a conversation.
Yeah.
This is the fun of it, I think. I hope you enjoy it as well. Before we get to my interview with Nathan Walter, please take a moment to hear from the sponsors who so generously support this podcast. Whether you specialize in workers' compensation, employment and labor, or insurance defense, Case has been crafted to cater to your law firm's specific needs. With a comprehensive suite of features, including document management, time tracking, billing, and online payment reconciliation, Case can automate your practice and streamline your workflows. Stop relying on manual processes and explore the possibilities at meruscase.com. Visit them today. That's meruscase.com. Legal Week is almost here. From March 9th to 12th, join us at the new North Javits Center in New York City for 4 incredible days of legal innovation. Explore the latest in AI, legal operations, litigation tools, and more. Don't miss your chance to lock in the lowest rate. Secure your pass today at LegalWeekShow.com. So are you, I guess since we are here, are you a wine connoisseur?
Yeah. I mean, connoisseur is a high bar. I know a lot about wines in Northern California. I know almost nothing about most French varietals, or I know a little bit about Northern Italy wines. But, being raised in Sonoma, wine is huge. It's a part of your life. Everyone there is related to wine in some way. My family heirloom that was given to me as a treasure from my parents was a bottle of wine that was bottled on the year that I was born.
Yeah.
And growing up, in 4th grade, your parents will give you a little sip of wine so you develop a taste for it. So much so that in high school, actually, I tell people this, in high school, we want booze, right? And we had been so acclimated to wine that we'd be sitting on cases of incredible wines, trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to get some beers for the party tonight? Because we wouldn't even consider drinking that for entertainment. And now it is nice. Wine is great. There's so much you can learn about it, and it's such a great, just a date spot or place to go. The facilities are always gorgeous. Yeah. It's a really nice option. Yeah.
See, when I was in high school, it was Boone's Farm apple wine is what people used to do. Is that even a thing anymore?
It's never been a thing in Sonoma.
remember thinking Sonoma. I don't even know it was ever a thing anywhere else, but I remember standing. Oh, well, no, that's a whole other story. Never mind. And people like when kids would, how kids got booze in those days. I don't know. It was hard. Um,
We persevered.
we
Yeah.
persevered. They do. So other than the fact that you grew up around here and this is kind of home, is there anything kind of about this environment that you really appreciate? I mean, what do you love about being here?
You know, it has a small town charm. So we're really at the intersection between the high tech scene of San Francisco and the agricultural state of California. And California is, our biggest export is agriculture. And so Sonoma sits in between the agriculture place and the tech sort of business entrepreneurs. And it's a great mix where you get that hospitality of, you would expect maybe in the South, like Southern hospitality, but still tech forward thinkers. And it's just a lovely place to live.
Yeah. I remember my first time coming to Santa Rosa. I think it was my first time, but it was this had to be like 25 years ago or something. I was working for American Lawyer Media in New York, but they acquired a little public publishing company that was based in Santa Rosa. And it actually was like a legal publishing company, but it published like jury verdicts and things like that. And yeah. And so I was helping with kind of the due diligence around the acquisition. So I got to spend like a week out here and hung out with the guy who's the publisher of this little, I don't even remember exactly what it was. What I remember is coming to Santa Rosa for a week and not so much the publication, but I just thought it was the coolest place in the world. I felt like I had come to felt like sort of like a hippie paradise. Is it like that?
Yeah, there's definitely crunchy aspects. I mean, you get more crunchy when you go to Marin and you get into the hills. And there is certainly, I mean, we're at the very base of Mendocino, which is extremely crunchy in a great way, like living off the land. And you have a little bit of that. You have a lot of people that are in the wine industry. So it's like wine industry people. There's the crunchy people that like the nature and being the proximity to the Pacific Ocean. And then there's people like me who just end up here because I was born here.
Yeah, right. So is building a legal tech company, does it have any parallels to fermenting wine?
My gosh. If you're competing with like a massive AI super wine mine that's constantly making the best Cabernet Sauvignons, the winemaking, I mean, yes and no. There is obviously, when you're making wine, there's an incredible amount of setup that goes into it.
Right.
And you're sort of dialing in specific things so that there is immediacy in the bottle, there's longevity, and there's complexity. So those are the three good tenets of a bottle of wine. You want a bottle that you can open right after you bottle it. It's going to knock your socks off. It's going to be complex. You're going to have great balance. And then you want a bottle that's going to last a really long time. And I think that in legal tech, it's sort of similar when I'm doing product development, where it says, okay, I need a product that people can get value from immediately. And then I also need a product that will get better the more they use it over time, where we're starting to bake in their practices and automating things. So you have that long-term and short-term thinking. So you need to get them in the door. They need to get value immediately. Just get better with time the more they use it.
All right. So what was the, we'll sell no wine before it's time? What was that, like Ernest and Julio Gallo or something? That used to be an advertising slogan.
Gallos are an incredibly powerful family in this area, that's for sure.
Is that
still? Yeah, there's probably a dozen very powerful families in Sonoma and Napa County. They're effectively household names. Yeah. They're doing quite well.
Yeah. Okay, this is totally off the side, but that just made me wonder, like, how long has your family been in this area?
So my mom was actually the first female attorney in Napa County, and she was a public defender. So this is basically since, I think, the mid-'80s, we've been in Sonoma. My family before that's like San Jose, and we actually have lineage from the original ships into America on like the Mayflower. So we've been all over America since its founding, and then now we found a lot of our family has made it to the Bay Area and wine country.
Yeah, do you know when your family came to the West Coast?
No idea. I'm sure there's an autobiography out there that explains that.
All right, so you grew up in Sonoma. How did you get from there to being a lawyer? And then how did you get from being a lawyer to being a startup founder?
Yeah, sort of randomly. None of this was intentional. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I never thought of myself as a business person. I never really even thought of myself as being an attorney. I graduated from college with a philosophy major, and I was initially planning on
a philosophy.
the
You've got that, yeah,
beard, the
yeah,
long hair.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I still love philosophy, but you can't really go to a philosophy career fair. I've noticed my fourth year at UC Santa Barbara. So I was considering working with a vacation company that some of my brother's friends, my brother went to Stanford, and his friends were trying to create this new vacation company. That fell apart. And then I realized I had no career prospects. I didn't have any marketable skills, really. Nobody cares if you're thinking really hard about Aristotle. So I decided, I was like, you know what? I looked at the stats, and people that do best on the LSAT are engineers, followed by second, which was philosophy majors. I said, okay, I could just go to law school. I'll take out a loan and I'll just kick the career can down the road, and then I'll figure out what I want to do after law school and maybe have a marketable skill.
Yeah.
I ended up really loving law because it was a sort of like a practical application of philosophy in real world life,
Yeah.
where philosophy,
Yeah.
you take a course and you know less than when you started because you realize your assumptions were false.
Yeah.
And you sort of pick up the assumptions you have over all sorts of things. In the end, you're like, well, we have no idea.
There's no right answers.
No, there's not. Like, we're trying to find these right answers, and it's just
Yeah.
everyone has a different, really strong point. And then law was, okay, so we want to incentivize, justice and an equal and equitable democracy and nation. So what are the rules we need to write down to ensure that behavior is incentivized to align with the societal norms or societal dictates? And I really like that sort of connection from the esoteric into the day-to-day sort of psychology incentivization of a nation and its populace.
Yeah.
And went to law school, graduated law school. I initially wanted to be a public defender like my mom. And this is going to be a tirade, so I apologize in advance. But I wanted to be a public defender. My mom was a public defender. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do public defense. And when you tell people that in law school, they'll say, okay, the best thing for you to do is work with the DA as like a clerkship, and then learn how the prosecutors do their thing, so that when you're against them, you're not surprised by what they're doing. You'll be a better public defendant if you have that inside knowledge.
Yeah.
So I joined the Los Angeles DA's hardcore gang unit, which has now been dissolved, but it's a unit in Los Angeles County that specializes in prosecuting gang-related homicides in the county. And going into that, I kind of bit off more than I could chew because it was literally gruesome. And I thought that I've watched horror movies before, and in my mind I said, oh yeah, I can handle, I'm a tough guy. I can handle, real life gruesome and murder and stuff. In real life, it is so much worse.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the stomach for it. And I just couldn't I wasn't strong enough at the end of the day. So I said, all right, I'm done with criminal law. I'm going to go into civil litigation. I held on to this idea that through my practice, I would be servicing justice. And in civil litigation defense, what I found was that
You were on the defense side.
I was on the defense side, sometimes plaintiff side, but mostly the defense side. But what I found in civil litigation was that if you're not getting sued for millions of dollars, it's almost always cheaper just to pay the party suing you than it would be to pay attorneys to prove you don't owe that money. And that really bugged me because I would be working the case as an associate. Therefore, I was intimately familiar with the facts because I was doing all the discovery, and I would know my client didn't owe any money, and that the person suing them was just trying to get some money by suing them.
And settlement kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just, I looked at myself and I'm like, my fees, I am the reason that parties who have not done anything wrong are incentivized and often do settle on unfavorable terms by the mere fact they're being sued. That doesn't make it right. It's immoral, in my opinion. An innocent party shouldn't have to suffer for doing everything right. And there was a really rough mediation one day. It was 8 hours, and the opposing counsel had no case. And I had all the evidence. I brought the receipts, as they say, to show, hey, you don't have any case.
Yep.
Opposing counsel was absolutely unhinged, broke down crying at one point, and sort of gathered himself, and their clients were outside of the room, and said, you know what, I don't care that I don't have a case. I'm going to go to court. I'm going to bang my fist on the table, and you're going to be begging me to pay the $100K I'm asking for today. And it was infuriating because normally that's an unspoken practice. Like, no one would ever admit to that, especially not a plaintiff's attorney. This guy was a little bit loose, and we were in mediation, so it was confidential. But when he said it, it was infuriating. He was right, walked away with the money that day because of that. But at that point I said, okay, this is a big problem. And I don't think I can keep practicing with a straight face and really look myself in the mirror if I'm going to continue being a part of this problem. So let me see if I can learn how to code and create a platform that can help address the problem. And I approached the relatively modest automation of discovery, which I found to be the tool that's most frequently used to bleed your opponents dry. because you get a discovery questions, and a discovery is just an exchange of questions and requests from one party to another. And when you ask another party a question, their attorney has to spend time to answer it, whether that's finding documents or substantively responding to it. And that makes them accrue attorney's fees. So a clever lawyer will say, oh, I'll just ask another question, and therefore they're going to accrue more attorney's fees. So I'll ask another question and another. And you end up propounding and bleeding and papering your opponents to death through discovery that demolishes my clients, or did demolish my clients' litigation's budgets. So by the time we got down to settlement table, they didn't have any more money to pursue this case.
Right.
And they were sitting down at tables they couldn't get up.
Right. You're hitting on everything that's broken about the legal system.
Right, yeah, exactly. Right. And so I figured, like, okay, discovery is relatively simple at the time. It's actually far more complex than I anticipated, but that's okay. And I said, okay, if I could eliminate discovery where no time is spent on either side for discovery, and it can still achieve the ends of discovery that is intended for, like the fair exchange of information, but there's no bleed dry component of that, that will make litigation a little bit better. And it will mean parties can pursue their cases for longer without destroying themselves financially. And that's literally been my whole purpose in life, really, is just to, I don't think I'm going to solve hunger or cure cancer, but I do have an opportunity with a career to make the world a little bit better of a place. And that's exactly what I'm focused on.
You jumped right over the learn to code part. I mean,
oh, yeah.
How long did that take before you were able to even start working?
I mean, I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and the initial goal was setting up sort of frameworks or vaporware to test the market and see, okay, what would attorneys actually buy? And how do we need to construct this program in a way where if I show it to any attorney, they say, yeah, I'll buy that. So I was creating these vaporware programs. It took months. I took like a code academy class. And I'm constantly, I'm still learning now. Although now with AI, I'm probably worse than I was then, because I don't even read a line of the code that I draft. And I just use that coding to create vaporware programs. And then I would cold call people based on their bar number to see if they would buy this product. And then once I had people that routinely said, yes, I'll pay $100 a month for this, then I said, okay, I have something. And then I went out searching for a team.
Yeah. This was all, I thought I had this written down somewhere, like around 2020, is that when you started?
Yeah, about 2020. Yeah, end of 2020.
And you're a co-founder. Who's your co-founder?
So co-founder Chris Meffin was a lead engineer at Relativity eDiscovery. I found him playing video games is sort of the short story of it. Basically, I was looking for CTOs and interviewing a bunch of people, and I had created this video game community when I moved to Orange County from LA as an attorney for young professionals to play video games after work. Because I needed some sort of social life, and I moved away from all my friends in LA to Orange County. I didn't know anybody. So I said, okay, I'm going to fabricate a social life. So I went to Walmart, I bought a PlayStation. I started recruiting people to have somebody play video games with after work. At the peak, we had about 815 active members. It was an international gaming community, and we would communicate on Discord, which is the gamers' version of Slack. And I was looking at this point, I was looking for CTOs, and so I posted on the Discord with my gaming group. I said, "Hey, does anyone know how to code better than I do? Low bar. I'm trying to start a company, and I need a technical co-founder." A player in the community with the gamer tag Sacrilicious messages me. So we're already starting off. I'm like, okay, this is going nowhere. He's like, yeah, I know how to code. And we went back and forth in discussions. It turns out he was a lead engineer at Relativity eDiscovery. He had a group of people he started a company with before, a designer, a back end, and a front end. He says, I've talked to them. We all think this is a great idea. And then we all basically got together and started building Briefpoint full time for no salary. And it took years. Yeah.
So how long did it take?
Well, we thought we were going to launch a lot sooner than we did. We ended up launching in June of 2022. We went about 2 to 3 years without pay, working full time.
Is that why? Did I see? I was looking, it looked like you worked at Ironclad for a while in there or something?
Yes, yeah. So I didn't really budget well. But like setting up a company, I thought we were going to launch within months. It ended up being over a year.
Yeah.
And so I got my bank account down personally to $600 of liquidity. And I'm in Newport Beach, California. The average rent there is more than $600 a month, and mine was too, by a multiple. And so I'm not a mathematician, but with $600 in my bank account and the end of the month coming up, I said, I got to find a job.
Even a philosopher can do it.
Even a philosopher, there's no real way to philosophize your way out of debt. And so I said, oh, crap, I'm going to need to get a job to pay myself some money to pay for rent while we continue to build Briefpoint for revenue.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And I thought, all right, I could go back to law and I can get more money to develop a bigger wallet, or I could join a legal tech company and learn how to sell tech to attorneys. Less pay, but greater long-term impact for Briefpoint. So I ended up choosing the latter and joining Ironclad as an entry-level salesperson. So after a 5-year career in law and litigation, my next technical full-time job was being a cold call monkey for Ironclad, where I would cold call attorneys. My colleagues were all recent college grads, maybe. I'd cold call attorneys from 8:30 a.m. to 3 p.m., trying to sell them Ironclad. And then from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m., I did Briefpoint. I did that for a year and 7 months, basically every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably good experience, though.
Great. Really good experience. Yeah. Seeing Ironclad, which is now at 200 million ARR, YC company, great leaders from Salesforce joined Ironclad, being able to see how they structure a sales organization was critical for Briefpoint's early successes. 100%.
Yeah. Because I wondered, one of the things I wondered, I always wonder this when I talk to founders is that part of how you learn to be a founder. I mean, it's one thing to have a product vision and learn to code and learn to build that product, but you also have to have a vision around the business and marketing and sales and go-to-market and all those other things.
Yeah.
How did you kind of figure that all out?
I mean, I read a lot of books. The books ended up not being very helpful, but I read a lot of them. There was a couple that were really helpful, including high output management. That was really important just for managing functions. It started like I needed to learn the acronyms. So ARR, NRR, all these acronyms that I had no exposure to as a litigator. I basically would just look up the acronym, and then I would look up the acronyms in that article until I knew what all the acronyms meant. And that was sort of how I could be able to speak with the acronym soup that you end up falling into as a business person. I also had a lot of help from my brother, Colin Walter, who is a serial entrepreneur, very smart guy. He was a VP at Google and Oura Ring and all that. And he, helped me out with like, okay, you need to use this platform for X and this thing for Y, relying on advisors and people that have done it before to help me sort of structure that idea. And then just making sure you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 2020, you get going on this. 2022, you get a product out. Then what happened?
Well, we got our product out in 2022, and this is before ChatGPT. And we're cruising along. Things are going well. We're sort of trying to avoid raising money because we don't want, we wanted to keep ownership of it. We ended up raising money.
Were people buying it? I mean, right
yeah, people were buying it. It was a very unique thing in that automation tech wasn't interesting. Nobody cared about AI. The last time we talked about AI in law was TAR, and that was good, but it wasn't life-changing.
Right.
And so when we were approaching with AI, nobody really cared about it. We still got really good growth just because we had this niche thing that you could only find with Briefpoint. And we started from the bottom up, like solo attorneys. Start an SMB, because being in legal tech for a while, starting in 2016, technically, so many legal tech companies would go out with enterprise first mindset. They would say, I'm going to create a legal tech company. I'm going to nail down the AM Law 100, and we're going to be taking checks on average 100K every day. Those companies often died waiting for their first deal to close because going into the AM Law 100 is incredibly difficult to scale. And that's why VCs initially wouldn't even touch legal tech. It's not like they have a procurement function that is unified across the industry. It's like, okay, it's a librarian at law firm A. It's this one partner at law firm B. It's like the tech savvy associate at law firm C.
Right.
Even identifying the person to talk to was very hard to scale. So I said, I'm going to do the opposite of that. I'm going to start by calling people, just cold calling these solo attorneys, trying to sell them this product. And we closed deals in as little as 8 minutes after the first call.
Yeah.
Just because it was such a niche, it really registered. Then I met with Scott Stevenson, the CEO of Spellbook, and he basically introduced me to GPT. And he says, hey, this GPT thing is going to change the world. And he said, anything a human can do, GPT can do if you use it right. So then
this is in the era of like 3.5, 4.0.
This is before ChatGPT.
Before.
Yeah. And Scott's always been ahead of that. And if anyone hasn't checked out Spellbook, I would highly recommend checking out Spellbook. At that point, we started seeing where large language models were going, and we started building in anticipation of large language models. And that set us up really nicely for when ChatGPT came out and all the hype created. We were already solving a lot, and we were scratching a lot of these itches. We were already ready to deploy it, and that set us up really good for, up until now, basically.
Yeah. My interview with Nathan Walter of Briefpoint will continue in just a moment, but first, please take this opportunity to learn about the sponsors whose generosity keeps this podcast running. Don't spend your time and resources on a generic law practice management software. Pick Meriscase, the software designed specifically for workers' compensation, employment and labor, and insurance defense firms. With extensive features tailored to your specialized area of practice, Meriscase enables you to efficiently run a successful law firm. Meriscase automates email and document management, time tracking and billing, online payment reconciliation, and much more. Discover all about it at meriscase.com. That's MERUSCASE.com. Now back to the second part of my interview with Nathan Walter. So, why don't you talk a little bit about what it is? What did you guys build?
Yeah. So our Briefpoint's goal is to eliminate discovery from the face of the earth. What that means is we're building a system to
Good chips.
Fantastic chips. Building a system to reduce the amount of time you spend on discovery, which means pain point elimination. Well, our goal is to build a platform where the second you get discovery requests from opposing counsel, the responses are already drafted. Moving back from that, what Briefpoint does as we continue building towards that, you upload opposing counsel's discovery requests, you upload the case files, so all the records, reports, email changes, things you would normally produce.
Mm-hmm.
And then we give our users a downloaded Word document that's formatted for their jurisdictions, formatting rules and customs automatically, and it's a completed work product. It's work product that doesn't require revision. You don't need to tweak it. The goal is so that you get the work product, all you need to do is sign it, and you're done. So we draft discovery requests, and in more advanced ways, we draft discovery responses. And responses are really our main focus because that takes up the most time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for request for production, request for admission.
Interrogatories, requests for admissions, requests for productions, demand for productions, however you phrase it. You upload opposing counsel's request PDF, the one that they electronically serve you. We identify the jurisdiction to make sure the Word document's formatted correctly. We pull out all the requests. We automatically object. We look through the documents to find the answer to the questions. We write the answers to the questions. We generate baited production packages. We do all the things that you would normally do and when responding to discovery, except we just automate it, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And probably worth saying also for anybody watching or listening to this that you've been on my How It Works. We've got demonstration videos on my site. You've got demonstration videos on your site.
Plenty of videos
out there on YouTube to show how it works and what it does.
Yeah.
And then the kind of the more recent launch was the auto doc feature, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a really foundational feature for a lot of what we're building. When I think about product development, I think about Legos, and I think about making tools and features that can be reused and repurposed in other ways. And AutoDoc, which is the first feature we launched that actually ingests large productions and makes use of them, is the foundation for a lot of things we're going to be building, where we're learning about the case a ton and then executing tasks in as close to the same information framework the attorney would if they were executing the tasks. So when we automate things, we want to do so in a way that the attorney would normally do. And we have to then mimic the attorney's point of view, which is one that knows a lot about the case or would take time to learn certain things about the case. And so that involved learning about, okay, we need to know the complaint, the causes of action. We need to know, where are all these documents, what's in these documents, what are the damages, and then executing tasks in that framework. So when the user attorney gets the Word document, it looks exactly like what they would have created on their own.
Yeah. Does this start to, interesting that your co-founder came from relativity, because you're kind of right on the perimeter a little bit of what relativity does. Do you move farther into that perimeter? Do you do more of that kind of that side of the
discovery?
I mean, you're helping find what's relevant now to some extent. So.
Yes. It looks similar to e-discovery in that function where we're saying, okay, I want to find out all the documents that meet this criteria, and we sort of do that. But it's meaningfully different because we really consider ourselves like the last mile of e-discovery. Yeah. We're not building systems for redaction yet. We're not checking for privilege. We're not a Google Drive or a shared drive where parties can exchange documents. And we're really like, we can solve e-discovery needs if your case has 30,000 pages or less in it, if you don't need metadata slip sheets, if you don't need to produce documents in native form, we can do everything. When we get to cases that are big enough to warrant an e-discovery expenditure, we recommend using an e-discovery platform. Granted, they're much more expensive and they're very valuable for what they do. But once you've culled that larger production through e-discovery, then Briefpoint can help again by just separating that cold production into the actual RFPs each document is responsive to and giving you a Word document, which is sort of like the last step of the e-discovery.
Yes. Yeah. Makes sense. You started, as you said, kind of focusing more on the SMB side of the market. Where are you today in terms of?
Yeah, so I think we're at a little over, we have a little over 1,500 all-time users for law firms. We're starting to move up market more. The move up market is at the same time a move to protect ourselves from GPT-7. We're seeing so many great attorneys create awesome bespoke tools for themselves with Claude and everything else. We want to make sure that we can live in a world where a lawyer can use Claude or ChatGPT to create their own tool for anything. And the way we do that is by considering what is an LLM really good at and where is the LLM's blind spots. And LLM is great at data ingestion and all that stuff, where they're relying on the large language models and the corpus of data and everything. What's missing is the attorney's sort of perspective, the attorney's habits, or a law firm's strategy across cases. And when we're moving up market as we are now, and what we're doing is building a system where we sort of store how a law firm objects and responds to discovery, and then automatically apply that strategy to every new discovery request they get. And that's differentiation, right? And when we look at, we want to make sure we can do that well. Large firms like that. We have a large firm who has a large corporate client who actually requires that if you get a discovery set, you look at how they've responded to discovery in the past. So if there's a plaintiff attorney that's looking at this discovery response and that discovery response in two different cases with the same defendant, they're saying, oh, wait, you said product X wasn't defective, and now you're admitting that it is defective in this case. What's going on? So with Briefpoint in our move-up market, we're pumping this SRS or similar request surfacer as a way to enforce standardization across cases, clients, and firms. So you get that benefit that can't be captured in a chatbot.
That's really interesting. What about there's one of the objections you keep hearing to generative AI from sort of at least some segments of the legal market is that it is somehow trying to replace the craft of lawyering. What I do, I'm a special snowflake, I'm a lawyer, I have this particular style of whether it's discovery, whether it's brief writing, whatever else it might be. Do you see yourself in any way as replacing the craft or just freeing lawyers to focus more on the craft?
So we definitely don't want to replace the craft. And our goal is to really almost scale that craft. So what we want to build for is something where attorney says, okay, I like to do things in XYZ manner and order. We want to say, okay, that's how you do things and reapply it. I don't know that, let me just give you an example. I think that I have so many thoughts on this, so I apologize. I don't even know where to start. But
well, you must hear it all the time.
Yeah,
maybe not.
Sort of. People that are resistant to AI usually don't knock on my door. But what is the craft, right? Let's get into philosophy. What does it mean to have a specific way of doing things? And there is a spectrum of attorney preferences that range from the superstitious to the super impactful. And on the superstitious side of things, you have an attorney that likes to do a double intent after every heading, and the page number must be this font and this thing, and everything must be formatted exactly like this. And that doesn't actually impact the case materially. And I like to think that, or I believe that that's more of a artifact of the litigator's lack of control over outcomes, where because they're sort of handing these documents to the judge and the jury, and once it's out of their control, they can't change it. They need to maintain some sort of fictitious control over an outcome they really don't have a lot of say in, so that they bake in these mechanisms of control in the formatting and specific preferences, so that when it's out, they say, okay, I did everything I could do, like literally everything to the smallest detail. There's nothing I could have done differently or better. And it's sort of the same as if you were watching a sports game, you put on your lucky jersey. You were creating an artifact of control over the outcome that doesn't truly exist because you're emotionally invested in the outcome of an event that you have no control over.
Yeah. Patriots jersey is in the trash, right?
I'm very sorry about that. And that's on the one side, like all the way to the super impactful, which is an attorney that knows the judge, that has done a case just like this and understands what arguments the judge is going to like, what kind of decorum the judge prioritizes or enjoys. That is super impactful preference stuff. So on the far left side of the superstitious, AI can replace a large chunk of that. Absolutely. And we can systemize that. We can automate that. When we get into the higher end of things where attorneys are truly providing their most value, I don't think AI can really, it can give you information to act on that, but it's not going to replace.
Yeah, that all makes sense. Yeah. What about just in terms of how the market views what you do from 2022 when you put that product out in the market to today? Have you seen a significant change just in sort of attitude among lawyers toward automation of something that was never automated before?
Right. Well, I mean, the real catalyst or the watershed moment was when everything automated everything, right? So before that, it was, I mean, it's magic, right? It's something that has never been done before. And now, and it was always enough. It was always incredible. Then when we started getting these companies that are saying, oh, we're just going to give you access to ChatGPT. We're going to put a UI over it. We're going to have it like pull in information from documents and we'll draft anything. Now the market's saying, oh, you only do discovery. So it went from, oh my God, this is amazing to, well, is this all you do? Right? And so the market, the expectations have skyrocketed. Now we're starting to see a little bit of AI fatigue for sure.
Yeah.
I think every attorney is pretty exhausted from just being bombarded with AI stuff all the time. And I totally get that. But from our perspective, more people are asking, oh, do you draft motions for summary judgment?
Right.
And we had a guy that wasn't interested in Briefpoint because we didn't draft motions for summary judgment. Any AI company that says they can draft a successful motion for summary judgment, I would be really, really careful about a multi-year contract.
Right.
Test it before you buy it, sort of thing.
So what is your response to that? Do you start thinking about how do we expand beyond discovery, or do you continue to focus on what your core is and what you do, what you do well?
There's certainly a temptation to spread out, move horizontal, because we get that feedback, right? They say, hey, you do this, but you don't do that. And then these other companies do everything and they do discovery as well. A lot of companies do that now, not as well as we do, I would say. And the way I'm thinking about this is not doing that. So instead of going wide, we're just going to go deeper and deeper and deeper until we can do discovery so well that there's no complaints. And this is something I talk to my team about too. I think about Slack. And Slack is offering a communication service that is like a group chat and coordinate and stuff. Microsoft Teams has a very similar function, but it's not as good as Slack. But Slack isn't that expensive. So people will have Microsoft Suite and they'll use Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. But they'll use Slack for communications and not use Teams for communications because the Slack does it so much better. And it's not expensive enough where it would be like, oh, our budget's going to be destroyed if we do Microsoft and Slack. So I think Briefpoint's right now, this may change, we want to just go do discovery so freaking well that users will have a subscription to Harvey and a subscription to Briefpoint because we're doing this one thing better than anyone else does. And that allows us to compete with these larger groups by investing more into discovery than would be commercially reasonable for them to do given their offerings.
Yeah. So we're up here in Santa Rosa, which is like an hour north of San Francisco.
Yeah,
I think it took me a little over about an hour. I drove up from Oakland about an hour and 20 minutes, but it was pouring rain the whole time. So that slowed me down a little bit. Does it matter where you are to run a legal tech company?
No. I mean, yes and no. It's easy to say that I'm not missing out from being San Francisco when I'm not there. I think that it is important when if you're in San Francisco and you're going to events and you're rubbing shoulders with people that are facing the same challenges as you, and you're having discussions where you can get a really key, impactful insight just at a bar from an engineer who you struck up a conversation with, that is hugely valuable. So in that situation, proximity to other legal tech founders and legal tech companies is really important. For me, most of my team is in Chicago because most of my team is relative to Relativity, which is headquartered in Chicago. So it doesn't matter really, but I just have to drive further to go to those meetings to rub shoulders with people.
Right. What about access to capital? Have you raised money or are you?
Yeah, we raised a modest round,
Yeah.
and access to capital is not well. I hear that Series A in legal tech is getting more difficult these days. I will say that I get emails from VCs daily asking to meet and to invest. I think there's a lot of money in legal tech. There's a lot of money in AI. I don't know how long that's going to last, but as of this day, and it's getting a little bit harder, but it's been really easy to access capital in legal tech.
Mm,
The question is, do you want to? What kind of numbers are going to have to hit to
right.
make that make sense? Is someone else going to, the more you raise, the more difficult it is to engage in an exit opportunity when you have to be at a certain multiple of valuation to do that without
Yeah.
punishment, right?
Yeah. Kind of not necessarily with reference to Briefpoint specifically, but there's been so much talk over the last few weeks about Claude and CoWorks launch of that, plug-in legal contracts plug-in. Do you see the foundation models as at all threatening to what you do or to some of the other products out there in the legal tech space?
Absolutely. Maybe not today, right? And so when I think about models, I think about GPT-7. And GPT-7 is not actually something that's been announced, but it's like a theoretical, what does the next one look like?
Right.
And how do we protect ourselves from that?
Yeah.
And like there may come a day where you can go into Claude or ChatGPT and say, hey, I just got some discovery requests from opposing counsel. They're in my email. Go through my file, generate a Word document, object to these guys, and it does that, right? But once we're at that level, that is sort of the end of SaaS, right? That's sort of a post-SaaS world where, and we may be heading there.
Yeah.
And I think we can't pretend that that's not a possibility. So the question is, how do we create a system that adds value that can't be captured in these chat interfaces? And that's what we're focusing on, as I mentioned before, but is 100% a threat. Every legal tech, every SaaS company needs to be aware of this. And we need to make sure that we build systems that provide basically unique value beyond that. It's easier said than done. And there's one other point I wanted to make. I forget it, but if I remember, I'll let you know. Sorry.
I'll be here.
Yeah, okay. Perfect.
Not for too much longer. We're getting close. We're getting close to the end. But now I just forgot what I wanted to ask you. Oh, I know what I want to ask you, which is just yourself in your own kind of daily life. How do you use Gen AI tools?
So I do it a lot for prototyping. So I do I don't not.
Are you still doing the coding for the company?
Listen, I'm not that good at coding.
Yeah.
We're way more advanced than I could ever be helpful. But I will with my other legal engineer who we recently hired, Joe Bloss, and he and I create AI prototypes where we say, okay, can we get LLMs to do X reliably? And then we create a prototype where we run tests and we test it out. And then once we have this prototype working, we hand it to the real engineers who then build it into a production stack. Another problem, right? Like a vibe coder can create a little platform and have a pain point solved that's completely tailored to his or her needs. And they don't need to create designs for it because we have to have design meetings where we create a design. We need to send it to the front end. The front end needs to build the front end. We need to build the back end. We need to run QA. We need to run testing. We need to do the beta. All of those steps between us finding out that we can do this with large language models and us deploying it means that it takes, a month or two before it actually clicks in.
Yeah.
So we have to run really fast to get these things out to meet market expectations and ensure that we're doing things that are better than a chat interface. And just remembered what I was going to say. God,
what happens when you drink wine?
I know, right? I know. Yeah, but I really like what the attorneys are doing.
So you get to do kind of the not quite vibe coding, but to kind of test out and
exactly. So I just create prototypes. Also I do web design, right?
Yeah.
So all of Briefpoint's website is all Gen AI. I think that's
all right.
5.2, GPT 5.2. I will, you set up a GitHub repository, you can plug it into a website, and then you just vibe code websites into existence. So it's really great for business purposes because I'm like, I need to create a mutual action plan for this large firm with phased rollouts. I just describe that, and then I now have this shared website that people can go to and see this beautifully orchestrated mutual action plan Briefpoint rollout thing that's tailored to them.
Yeah. Was there a moment in building all of this over the last 6 years or so when you kind of had the light bulb went off and said, "This is going to work. I got a thing here"?
My God, I've never been so confident. Starting a company, it's more frequent, like, oh my God, like this is about to explode. I think I have moments where I look at the product and I'm like, oh my God, this is this is an amazing platform. And I'm really proud of the work that my team's done. Just from comparing that in my memory to when I started, which was like a horrible coded little UI where there's like 5 buttons and you press it and it just looks terrible, to this very complex system that is well represented. I was always confident that Briefpoint it provides a valuable service, and everything we do is designed to eliminate discovery so that there's less breach tactics in law. I hope that we get there, and I'm working towards that.
Yeah.
I definitely have never celebrated at all. It's always been, we need, pushing and moving. Yeah, exactly.
Is there, having gotten as far as you've gotten and having gone from law practice into becoming a founder, is there something you've learned? Like what's the best piece of advice you've learned that you would pass along to other founders?
Oh my gosh. I think that what I tell other founders, like one thing I learned when I was working at Ironclad was that I thought I could be a founder and have another full-time job at the same time. I thought I could stack 2 full-time jobs. I thought that was possible. And then while I was doing that, I thought I was doing both jobs fine. When my girlfriend at the time was seeing me work, 14 hours a day, and my whole life fell apart basically outside of that. And it's still not recovered, which is fine. I only care about my company and my fiance. But she saw what I was doing and she ended up investing $100,000 of her own money so that I could work on Briefpoint full time. So thank you.
That's when she became your fiance.
Exactly. I was like, I've done worse things for less. But when I moved to Briefpoint full time after she did that investment, and I really appreciate that, I realized how much work I had to do at Briefpoint.
Yeah.
And I realized that I wasn't doing both jobs fine. I was doing both jobs poorly. And if you're going to get into entrepreneurship, you need to be full time. It needs to be your one focus. Because especially if you're getting VC capital, you need to be in the top 2% of people who are crazy enough to do this. And that requires an Olympic level of dedication. It's a full-time thing. My advice to entrepreneurs is burn the ships. Set yourself up, sell everything you have, invest all of it in your company. So the only path forward is to make this company work. Put yourself in a corner like a rat and fight for your life and do not look back, because that's the bare minimum necessary for success.
I don't know if you make it sound awful or great. I love that. I think I told you yesterday, I interviewed Pablo Arredondo, one of the founders of Casetext, and I asked him for his advice, and I think this was a quote he grabbed from somewhere else, but he said, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
And I guess there's a lot of that. There can be a lot of that for a startup founder.
It's just, there's going to be so many times where it's awful. Starting a startup, there's a quote where he says, running a startup is like chewing on glass and staring into the abyss. And that is so true in legal tech.
Yeah.
Because we're chewing on glass. We're working through these really tough issues. I'm working all the time. And then I'm looking through the abyss. I'm like, well, what if the singularity happens and it wipes out all of SaaS?
Yeah.
That's always looming over. And so you're doing all this work with the threat of the rug just being pulled out of the entire industry, but you need to keep going. Yeah. And you have to put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have 2 more questions for you. One is, we'll come back to this place, to where we are, to this beautiful place. It's a little overcast today, but I've been in Sonoma County when it's quite sunny and beautiful and wonderful. So for you, what's like a great Saturday? How do you relax here? How do you enjoy this place where you are?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to glaze over. I mean, sure, obviously I work a lot, but I also play video games a lot, and I can do that anywhere. Assuming I'm not playing video games, I really like just, going to somewhere new. I mean, there's over 450 wineries in Napa. There's several hundred in Sonoma. Just taking my car, putting my fiance in it, driving in a direction, finding somewhere to go. I mean, we just went up the coast to Timber Cove, and they have this beautiful little resort that's just on the bluffs of the Pacific Ocean. That was 45 minutes away.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really traveling. We love wine tasting.
Yeah. You were explaining to me that right out there is the Pacific Ocean, beyond that mountain ridge.
Yeah, exactly. Beyond that mountain range, we got Bolinas, Point Reyes, all of the Northern California. The one is beyond there, and the one is right on the coast, and it is just astoundingly gorgeous.
Yeah. All right, my last question, just again, coming back to where we are today. If Briefpoint were a wine varietal, what kind of wine would it be?
Oh boy. So I would think that we
I
would.
feel like I'm Oprah Winfrey asking that
I
question.
love
It's like-
that question. That is such a good question. If Briefpoint was a varietal, that's so heavy. I would think we would probably be a Russian River Pinot Noir,
I love it.
where it has a lot of these hills has gaps in it that allows the cool sort of breeze and moisture to sort of solidify these Pinot grapes in the Russian River Valley. And I say that because it's a Pinot. It's not a life-changing cab. It's
Right.
not going to change your life. But Russian River Pinots, no matter the vintage, they're always good. They have decent body, strong minerality. They fit a very narrow purpose, and they do it really well,
Right.
like Briefpoint. Like they're always going to be good. They're not making big promises because the cabs can be really good, but the floor of cabs, the cabs can be really bad too. And we're not trying to be a cab. These Pinots aren't trying to be full-bodied in a way. They're just like, if you want a really good Pinot, the Russian River Pinot is exactly what you would get.
Well, a Pinot was my favorite wine, so that's a good choice. Well, I'll toast to that.
Cheers.
Cheers, and thanks for sitting down and talking to me. Yeah. All right, well, that does it for this episode of Law Next. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. Again, if you're listening to this, go over to YouTube and check out the full video of it, because it's a really pretty place we're sitting right now. And if you enjoy the show, leave us a comment as usual. And this is Bob Ambrogi. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.
That was fun.
All right.
That is the best interview I've ever had, for the record.